Hey, I'm Doug Draper. I'm a 1992 graduate from the University of Kansas, and I'd love to welcome you guys to our first episode of On the Banks. On the Banks is a fraternity podcast that focuses on stories about our brotherhood and embraces our shared values. So we're going to start at the beginning here, and we're going to have a great show. We have a couple of graduates that we're going to jump into. And if I had to come up with a title for this one, I think it would be let me see. I think it would be John Templeton McCarty and Boulevard G. Krebs meet Iowa State 1964. So what we're going to do is learn a story about some brothers from Iowa State from the class of 1964. They commemorated this amazing story about our fraternity and the connection of brothers. And we're going to learn a lot, like why they did it, how they did it, and really set the stage for our new series. It'll be great. So before we go any further, I want to make sure we know who our guests are. So we have Dean Plager and Rob Wilkes. Nice to have you brothers with us today. Thanks a lot.
Nice to be here.
Gotcha. Well, I think we'll start at where we start, which is a little bit about the story. So Dean, why don't you just set the stage with our audience about the meeting on the Sweetwater River back in 1849. Walk us through a little bit of that story before we jump into the fun part.
Well, I think all of us probably read about it back in our P Squared book. And I'm sure by the time you were long out of college as I was, you'd forgotten about the story. So it was nice to be reintroduced to it about two of the brothers early on in the fraternity's history, headed out west in the gold rush. By pure chance, in the groups they were traveling with happened to cross paths at a river in Wyoming. And even though the two brothers were only a year apart, they actually, as I understand, had never met in person. This was their first time. And just a great story about connecting with brothers in the fraternity. Mm-hmm. And once we found out about it, reminded of it again, and began to track down the area. It was too tempting to pass up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it wasn't just the two of you. I know there was a couple other brothers that jumped on, but it was back in July 7th, 2014, 165 years later. That's crazy that you could reenact it or not reenact, but commemorate it 165 years later. So, yeah, Rob or Dean, whoever, why did you decide to do it, right? I mean, obviously there's some planning. You just don't walk out the door and go get a cup of coffee and sit down and enjoy it. So there's a lot more to it. Talk to us about the reasons that you decided to take the trip and have the commemoration.
I think Rob was the prime motivator.
Well, let me reiterate something that Dean said, and that was, yeah, years ago I'd read the history and knew about the meeting. And I put that away in my memory, but for some reason, I was thinking it was on the Sweetwater River in Colorado. And so it never really registered with me. Well, there was an article in the Phi Gamma Delta, I think it was in 2012. And that article, once again, briefly talked about that meeting. And so I'm reading it and I'm looking at it, oh my God, they're talking about the Sweetwater River in Wyoming. Well, that's my playground. I'm from Casper, Wyoming, or was at that point in time. And multiple times I've been in that country, and I've got to see this. I've got to get out there and find this place. And so at that point, I decided that I'd make some inquiries about the Oregon Trail and the California Trail, and see where I could go from there. But really, it was that article in the Phi Gamma Delta that all of a sudden, I guess, made some neural connections for me and got me interested. And once I read that, given that part of the country is so important to me, it was just, I had to do it.
Yeah. That's great. So how did you guys convince your other pledge brothers? There was, I think, a total of 5 of you that made the journey. What was how did you convince the other brothers to join you?
Well, I think I called or emailed a number of them, but Dean's an adventurer. If you have enough time, he can recount a number of hair-raising adventures, I'm pretty sure. But at any rate, he's always in for an adventure. The other 2 guys, Jeff Warner from California,
Mm-hmm.
and Jack Gillerstead from Virginia, called me back right away, and they were interested. And they had to be very interested. I mean, that's quite an investment to travel from California and Virginia to come all the way out to Wyoming. And so they were just really, I don't know, just wanted to do it.
Yeah, good. Good deal. Well, you pretty much do anything for your pledge brothers. We all understand that. So, well, the amazing part is, it's on the banks. It's in the middle of Wyoming. It's quite a journey to get there. You have folks on either coast and yourselves. So talk to us a little bit about how you actually found it, right? Where did you start? Were there maps that you inquired about? Walk us through hey, I want to do it. Then what happened?
Okay. Well, in Casper, there's the Casper National Trails Interpretive Center. And that facility is devoted to Oregon Trail, California Trail, et cetera, Mormon Trail. And so I went there and talked to those people. They really weren't very as knowledgeable about it as I had hoped, but they did give me a reference to a fellow at the BLM office in Casper. And so I went and talked to him, and he was a real enthusiast, and he put me on some maps, some BLM maps. So I went and got myself a bunch of maps and laid them out, and I thought, well, this is going to be easy. I know this country, and I can do this. And then I grabbed, well, actually, to back up a bit, Ben Robinson had sent me about 3 pages of McCarty Conrad Journal. And so I started going through it and referencing what they were doing on a daily basis. They were very good about those references. And I laid my maps out, and then I had this high-tech mileage estimator, which was a piece of string marked off in 1 mile increments, and I would lay it out on the map. And at first I thought, this isn't going to work very well. How would those guys know their mileage on a daily basis? But actually, those estimates from McCarty and Conrad were very, very accurate. And that in combination with their discussion of things they saw in the country and things that I knew about, I could start plotting this thing out. And I was fortunate in that I could do it from a reference to Devil's Gate, and Dean and I had stopped off there, a reference to Devil's Gate, and so I could plan westward or plot westward, and a reference to, they didn't say it in the journal, but it's Rocky Point. They talked about the worst road they'd run into, and everybody does, and that's Rocky Point. So I could estimate the distances with my string, both coming from the east and going back from the west. And so then once I had it kind of plotted out, I gave Dean a call, and I said, listen, let's see if we can't go find this place. And that was in January of, yeah, it was.
Wyoming in January is.
The fact that you laughed, Dean, leads me to believe, like, what the hell are you getting me into?
Oh man, that's windy country out there, I'm telling you.
Well, not all the things you do for your pledge brothers are good. Let me put it that way. But anyway, Dean came out, and then we loaded up the truck one morning and took off, and with our maps and everything. And it turns out that meeting place is on land now owned by the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And so we kind of looked it over, and I don't remember, Dean, did we stop and talk to those people at that point in time?
Yeah, I think we just poked around a little bit. We didn't push them too hard that first time. We just sort of,
Yeah.
How did you track them down? Did you have to call into like Salt Lake City, or was there a local group there that you were able to reach out to?
no, they have it's a big deal there. They have a big center, and part of these young Mormons' history is to come there and sort of reenact the pulling those wagons up over those hills. And so that's where they start, is at this center. So it's a big deal for them.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of people there. And then when we finally did want to get on, they were really nice.
Good. Yeah. Did they look at you kind of odd? Like, why you guys want to be out here? Or what was their response whenever you explained your goal?
I suppose they did a little bit. The one thing we were trying to be, I mean, we wanted to do the reenactment and redo the toast, but this was on Mormon property and we didn't want to be disrespectful to them.
Mm.
So, if we could get off by ourselves where they didn't see us, we were happy to do a toast, but we were a little afraid they want to chaperone us around, and which in the end they didn't do.
Yeah. So Dean, who carried the flask? Because I know you guys had a little toast there. So who was breaking the rules?
I don't remember, actually. Somebody with the backpack must have been Rob.
I was about to say, there you go.
No, it was Warner, Jeff Warner.
Okay.
He, from California brought a bottle of very good brandy. And I'm not a big brandy fan, but this stuff was pretty good.
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was Jeff that did that.
Uh-huh.
Nice. So that's great. So talk to us about the day of, right? So you've got the maps and you found it. Nowadays it's GPS and cell phones, I think, would get us there pretty quick, but you found yourself there. It's July 7th, 2014. Walk us through what you did, what it felt like, what it looked like. Give us a recap of the day.
Well, we rendezvoused in Casper at my home. And then the day of the 7th, and I'd been in contact with the people at it's actually called the Willie Handcart site. And it's referencing a kind of a disaster that happened there. But at any rate, we left from my place in the morning and we timed it so that we could take our time, but still be there by 11 o'clock in the morning. I had talked to the people at the center, and they knew we were coming. And I think one of the reasons that they felt comfortable with us is because we look so damn old. But we had to coordinate it with them because they, as Dean mentioned, they do have a massive amount of people that make a pilgrimage there every summer. And they dress in period costumes and they push their hand carts. And they were worried about us being there at the same time they were having one of these things. And fortunately, it worked out for us that there wasn't one that day. So we did check in with them at the center. And then down the road, we went to, I think that place that we identified, wasn't it, Dean?
Yeah, we hadn't actually gone to the final destination the first time. We just scouted it. So we had some fence gates and stuff we were to go through that we hadn't been through before, I think, if I remember right.
Yes, that's correct. And anyway, we got down to the river and then we started looking around and walking about. And there's a small footbridge across the river there. And so we decided as best we could, given the reference in the journal, there was a reference to livestocking the animals up on a bluff and this sort of thing that day. But at any rate, as we were looking around, we looked behind us and looking up this hill, and you can still see the ruts in that hill where they brought those wagons down. And it was about that time we really got excited. Okay,
Yeah.
we thought we did it. Here we are. Well, you don't know. I mean, there's no way to know for sure if it's at the place. But I'll tell you what, we had to be close.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was like a college freshman jumping around. I was
Nice.
excited about it.
So was there any words or an official toast that you guys made? And if so, do you remember at all what you toasted to? What did you say at that moment?
I don't remember that. I don't think we were looking far enough ahead to imagine it would be so documented.
Well, we did. I think what we did is we toasted McCarty and Krause.
Yeah. We did do that.
We toasted each other, and then we toasted the fraternity.
Yeah.
And I think we still had some of that brandy left.
Well, that's what it's for. So let me ask you this question. What do you guys think the significance of that is, right? I mean, there was the significance of the meeting, 1849, and then the significance of your meeting in 2014. Give us kind of the big picture, kind of your thoughts. What was the purpose behind it? What'd you feel?
Well, one of the things I remember was that phrase, "not for college days alone." And that really stuck with me. And that has certainly been this group of Fijis from that same class of 64. We've been doing annual reunions now for a decade. And my God, those are fun. You know, we've included our wives. They've become great friends with each other. And we had to call this year off because of COVID. But it is a great time. And
that's great.
You know, we go through this debate every time we get together. What neat place are we going to go to next time? And when it turns out we could be in a Motel 6 in downtown Detroit and have just as good a time. It doesn't care. We don't care where we're at. I hosted one out here in New England, in New Hampshire on the seacoast. I put a tent up for everybody. I wanted to be able to come down and see the coast, see the ocean and stuff. Every morning I'd come in, they had the flaps down and the heater on. They didn't care what the view was, as long as they could sit around and talk with each other. I mean, it's just great. They have such a wonderful time together. So
yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Rob. Have you ever had, the show is that we're doing is called On the Banks. It's about connecting brothers and sharing our values. Have you ever had what we would refer to as an on the banks moment? Anybody that you had a hap chance that you've met in your years?
Yeah, and this one is it's really kind of funny. My daughter was married, 29 years ago. And of course, got to know my son-in-law's family, and we spent time together over the years and done holidays together. My son-in-law's father even has a place in the mountains about 10 miles from us. So I thought I knew him pretty well, but here I'd say about 5, maybe 10 years ago, somewhere in that range, he was asking me about college, and I told him I went to Iowa State and all that. And I knew he'd gone to the University of Wyoming. And I said to him, and I was fraternity. So which one? And I said, well, I was in Phi Gamma Delta. He looked at me and says, well, I was a Fiji.
Wow.
I had no idea all those years. So I guess that's about as close to a Sweetwater experience as I've had.
Yeah. Dean, what about you? Have you had an on the banks moment? You've
been
a world traveler, so I'm sure you got a heck of a story.
Yeah, I've had several of those. I ran into a friend, a fellow classmate when I was in officer candidate school in the Army, who was a Phi Gam, and a couple of my sailing buddies, it turns out, are Fijis from other institutions. So it's always fun to meet those people and find out about their fraternity and what it was like, what the similarities, what the differences were
Yeah,
between.
that's great. Well, that's
I
the whole,
must say, one of the things I'm proud of is that none of them that I've met have as strong a tie to their local chapter as our brothers do to ours.
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of that.
yeah. Well, I think that's a testament to the fact that you guys brought it all full circle. You know, it wasn't right out of college. It was, you know, at the end of your careers, and you still keep in touch, and you made the commitment to be out there July 7th, 2014. So your story is exactly what our show is all about, connecting with brothers and sharing those values. So I can't thank you gentlemen enough for joining us today. And you know what? I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today as well, all you brothers that sat in to listen. We have many more stories coming, a lot more stories to tell, and we can't thank you enough for joining us. So until we meet again on the banks, I'd just like to say mighty proud to be a Fiji. Take care.